What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel. My name's Brandon. Today we're taking a look at the M-Ggame RGB dual USB streaming interface. Now the dual means it's got two USB ins, one for a stream PC, one for a gaming PC or a console, and it basically allows you to mix all your audio and output it to different sources. So you can take headphone output, speaker output, and a stream output and route those in different ways. The headphone output and the main output are monitoring, right? So they have a 3.5 millimeter output jack, I should say, on the back for headphones, speakers, anything like that. The stream output is software, so that's what I have my system sounds running into OBS through. And then you have chat, alternative, and a sampler mixer so that you can really fine-tune exactly how everything's routed to your needs and specifications. This is the box that the mixer comes in. It's pretty straightforward. Got details about the mixer on the box. Sorry, I'm just checking to make sure everything looks all right. I'm kind of new at this. Shh, don't tell anybody. Nobody's supposed to know, and we're all supposed to look professional from day one, right? On the back, some really simple, pictures of what happens. All in all, the external packaging is really nice, and it gives you a breakdown of all the inputs and outputs on the back here. So, voice and sound effects, mute and censor button, customizable lighting, dual USB and console connection, so it's got an optical in, plus the two USB connections, multi-purpose 360 control knob with LED indicators, which what that does is it changes the FX parameters for the voice effects, and it also gives you a main out volume control. 5 individual faders plus headphone volume. So the headphone volume is what I was just talking about with the multi-purpose 360 knob. And the 5 individual faders, I don't necessarily like that you can't change how they're organized, but you've got, I'm looking at the interface, game, chat, sampler, and system/auxiliary, plus a microphone fader. Crystal clear mic technology. Enhance microphone quality by configuring limiter, gate, compressor, EQ, mic booster, and de-esser. And I will say this, the mic technology and the crystal preamp circuitry leave a little bit to be desired with the 3.5 millimeter input jack, which you have to use if you're using a USB microphone, or in my case, I like having an out-of-frame shotgun microphone, which could be a limitation of the microphone. I didn't have these problems running it directly into OBS, but it does get a little noisy at higher input levels. And it's got a connection for a foot switch, which is pretty cool. So, and there's a nice picture of the back of the packaging. Thumbnail time. So we'll have to see what that's going to look like. When you open the box, you're greeted by a wasted opportunity right here. Now, I say this because this would have been a good time for M-Ggame / InMusic, which is the parent company of M-Ggame, to put some graphic here to kind of a quick start to greet you front and center that the M-Ggame control panel has to be installed on your stream PC. You only need the drivers on your gaming PC, and that the software has to be running on the stream PC in order for the sampler, voice effects, and sensor button to work. Probably not the end of the world, and it's not a big deal that it's not there. I just think it's a missed opportunity. And then, of course, inside you have some more packaging and stuff, and the interface is in there. I will put a little clip of that moment from when it got unboxed into there and post. And there's really nothing else to talk about the box. Yeah, that's it. So give me a second, and I'm going to get everything unplugged so that we can look at the interface itself. All right, folks, we're back taking an outside look at the M-Ggame RGB dual USB audio interface. Now, it's pretty straightforward. I actually recorded about 8 minutes of this before, which I don't want to go through all that again. But I didn't have the FPS on my camera set right, so all the lights were flashing and stuff, and it looked really crazy. So, if anybody's curious, the lights are roughly 24 frames per second, or 24 hertz, 30 hertz, 24 FPS. Seems to look pretty good. Okay, so one thing real quick, and I have reached out to support. They've been super helpful. It took me about 10 minutes to get an RMA number. This button right here is the FX parameter button, and what is supposed to happen when you push this FX parameter button is it's supposed to switch from the distortion or vocal processor effect, whatever the effect is set to for the vocal effects, and it's supposed to change and do headphone volume, which is just not working the way it's supposed to, so I've got to send this unit back. Other than that, I've had no real problems. And I don't think it would be fair to, hold that against them just because they've been so helpful. So anyway, on the back, we've got the gain, XLR input, and a 3.5mm microphone input. And then we have headphone out and main out, so you can run headphones and speakers, 2 sets of headphones, and you can actually make it so that playing on 2 PCs, the audio from each one goes to the right spot. It's actually pretty good. I use it with my son playing games. And then we've got an auxiliary in. Now the only thing about this that I would say is I wish the auxiliary in was referenced over here with the headphone in, or the microphone in, just to keep the inputs and the outputs in 2 different places. And then you've got your dual foot switch, your optical, and your 2 USBs, your power in, and your power switch, which when you hit the power switch, it obviously shuts it off, but when it comes back on, it goes through a nice little setup thing. And then your faders, of course, with the indicator telling you how high up they are. The buttons get, like if you hit the mute button, the button gets brighter to let you know that it's been engaged. And, that's pretty much it. One thing to note, and I recorded, I don't know how many clips with a voice changer active, is when you power the unit back on, for whatever reason, it always activates voice changer number 1. So you got to make sure to remember to shut that off. But once it's active, you do this and it changes the vocal processor for whatever you happen to have set up. So that is the outside of the M-Ggame RGB dual USB streaming interface. There's lots of LED effects and stuff like that that do different things. If you want me to go through that, leave a comment down below and I will make that happen. I don't feel like I looked at the camera off enough to give myself enough time in post to make a clean cut before I set the audio interface down. Learning as we go.
Alright, now we'll go on over, take a quick look at the software, just a brief overview, and then leave a comment down below. Let me know if you want to go through how I have things set up and what I found works the best for me and makes things as intuitive as possible, because unfortunately I don't think the way M-Ggame recommends setting things up is going to be the best for usability, and I think you're going to run into a lot of problems that have a really simple solution.
So I just recorded 5 minutes of content with one of the voice effects active. One of the downsides to not monitoring your microphone. All right. So anyway, to my left, we're going to take a look at the M-Ggame RGB Dual USB streaming interfaces control panel. You get greeted by the home screen. Now, at the home screen, if you click one of these, it'll bring you to the voice effects panel, and if you click one of these, it'll bring you to the sampler panel, where you can change the various settings that have to do with that. And then up here, you can click Set Mic, which all Set Mic does is bring you to the setup page, which is the next page. So either way, they both get you to the same thing. This is where all of your settings are controlled for your microphone, your mute button, audio sources, and the sensor button, and the dual foot switch input. Of course, you have an equalizer, you have a compressor, which normalizes the extreme volume highs, a de-esser, which is supposed to make S's sound less hissy, a noise gate. I don't like the built-in noise gate. It's too harsh. And there's no configurable attack, hold, or release times. And a high-pass filter to get some of that really low-end rumble out of the situation. Your mute button can be configured to mute everything, or, let me rephrase, to mute the microphone on every output, or it can be configured to exclude certain outputs from being muted. So, your chat button. Let's say you want to mute your microphone to your stream, but you don't necessarily want to mute it to your teammates in Warzone. If you happen to be playing that, you uncheck this, and the chat input for your microphone will always work. LED control for the mute and sensor button, which this can also be configured in the LED panel. And then you have your foot switch, which gives you basically access to everything in the physical buttons. It'll let you push any of them. One thing that's nice about this is you don't have to change banks to hit your different sample buttons, and both are configured similarly. And then, of course, you have keys and modifiers if you want to use Windows keys. Then in your routing tab, you have your stream, chat, alt, sampler, main out, and headphones. And this is where you control what goes where. So the system input, stream output, the system input is your stream PC. The game input is your gaming PC. Chat input is a virtual audio device that the M-Ggame drivers installs. And then the sampler is, of course, your sample effects. And one thing of note, if you have basic mode and you have virtual fader mode for the different microphone and everything. Everything has it. So you can come here, you can put all in virtual fader, or you can put all in basic mode. What that does is it will ignore the volume sliders. It will still mute with the buttons, but it ignores the volume sliders. In your sampler, there are an absurd amount of samples. I don't know exactly how many. There's probably 20. And they are all configurable as far as their duration. You can cut them anytime you want, and you can audition this privately so that it'll only go to the headphones and it won't go out to the stream. But they're everywhere. Make sure it's actually playing. And then, of course, these are, punchline. By the 5 buttons below the voice effects. And then here you have your vocal effects. Now, I configure this so that if you want to change it to child,
which sounds a little bit like this. This is how I have it set up. I'm not saying it's the best, but it's how I have it set up.
And then I have the walkie-talkie set up with hold.
So you have to hold the button, and then I don't know how to describe the vocal effect. You can hear it. Comes on
till you release the button, and then it goes back to a normal mode. And here's where you control the LEDs, which has solid, pulse, chasing, and rainbow. And then some things have different options. So you like your sliders have, which this is actually for the dots on the side. There's no light in here. I'm not sure why they did that, but you have a lot of options. So gradient fader, that just means that it starts out one color at the bottom, and the higher up the fader goes, the more the color changes, and then they're all basically the same. And then you have your mute buttons and your what's the word that I want to use? Intermittent buttons. You know, the press and hold, press and release buttons all have their inactive, active, and there is also unassigned. I haven't used any of the buttons unassigned. I don't know why anybody would. And of course, your ring, the knob should not be included because the knob does not change color. Only the ring around the knob, your FX parameter button, and your speaker icon. And what the speaker icon does is that lets you know when you're in the headphone out volume control mode. When it's bright, you're in that. When it's dark, you're in the FX parameter mode, which changes the distortion or vocal processor of the voice effects. And again, this is where you can control the LEDs for the mute and censor buttons. That's really it for the software. Really quick, before I close out of this screen and go back to just my beautiful face, you know, the talking head, as it were, some things I'd like to see is the option to minimize the control panel to the taskbar. Because without the software running, it's really not doing you any good, and the mix is only doing half of what it could be doing. Another thing I'd like to see is the native option to start with Windows without having to make a custom startup task. I think it would just be easier and more intuitive if that stuff was just built right in. And, you know, maybe on this home, gave you the options right here. Start with Windows, minimize the taskbar. Would be great to see. Another thing that I think is not a good use of space and could have been done better is this FX param button that switches between your vocal processor, whatever you have it set to, and your headphone out. I think that the multi-purpose knob could have been a push knob. Just have that little click and then change from whichever one you want to use with the same indicator over here, but maybe build the indicator into the M-Ggame logo. Just my 2 cents on that. Alright, and that should basically wrap up our review of the M-Ggame RGB dual USB streaming interface. I've been using it for a couple weeks now, streaming, recording, and various tasks and applications. And the only complaints I really could point out are those that I just went over in the software, giving you the option to minimize the taskbar and giving you the native option to start with Windows without having to write a custom task. On the hardware side of things, the buttons could be a little better, I guess, is the only way to put it. They're very soft. You know, they don't give you the feeling of, okay, I actually pushed the button the way I meant to. And the kids are home, so the dogs are barking, so I'm going to try to wrap this up real quick. And the knob could have been different. The 3.5mm input and output jacks, if this isn't the kind of thing that you'll be unplugging and plugging in a lot, I certainly hope. So I don't think that's a big concern, but they don't feel like they're super high quality. But at the price point of $199, I think that this is incredible value. So do me a favor, if you like the video, make sure you hit the thumbs up, subscribe for more, and we'll be back soon with another review.